if everything else looks super good,
Yeah.
if that's a weak point, I imagine the explanation is important. Why the doc's FICO score is that low. Sometimes I guess if it's a one-time event, it might be more likely you cut them some slack, like a divorce or something like that, or as opposed to something that may become maybe more of an issue. I mean, am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can get away with some explanations if it's I've seen guys with a $70 medical payment that they were disputing, and all of a sudden it blows their score up. But we can get past those kind of things. What it purely comes back to, and getting back to kind of what your original question was, is we have to be at a 1.25 cash flow. And when we do the cash flow analysis, we'll go in and look at a practice for a consolidation. We'll go ahead and add back amortization, interest, travel, any sort of personal pension. We'll add back in, if there's potentially a wife's salary in there. We'll add back the net income, obviously, depreciation, obviously. So for the most part, maybe only 2 out of 10 times is cash flow really an issue. So that would kind of go across the board for all different type of loan programs. And just to kind of round out consolidations, the other thing is that in those consolidations we can include credit cards, and a lot of times SBA financing, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with, if you've ever done a business refinance, credit cards become a real gray area, and it's not necessarily something that that I have a ton of focus on. I don't have to get copies of the statements and verify every penny went to business expenses. So that's a real big deal, because now all of a sudden a guy has personal credit cards which he may not have been able to write off, and now they're within his business. Not to give any accounting advice, but sometimes, not to state the obvious, but, if they're write-offs, a write-off. But, so that would be consolidation loans. They typically sell themselves, so it'd be my area of highlight, once again, look as far as looking for deals. Practice acquisition financing, that's another really popular loan, and it usually makes sense. Again, a guy retiring, practice has been established for so many years. He's had a consistent cash flow for so many years, a consistent revenue. You can for the most part say that this new buyer will be in this practice, and he will be able to earn X dollar amount without fail. Obviously there's going to be a little bit of decline, but there's a whole nother subject. But the product there is up to 15 years. You can include working capital in the purchase. Sometimes in these acquisitions, accounts receivables aren't included, so we don't want the new buyer or the borrower to go in cash poor, and we'll give them some monies for that. And that program is up to 90% gross collections, which is real important to note, because most practices, as I mentioned earlier, maybe 65 to 70% of gross collections is a typical sales price. That gives the new borrower some room to, like you had mentioned earlier, a lot of these practices are going digital, especially dental. A lot of these practices are transitioning into digital equipment, so that's it gives the doctor plenty of room in that particular case. And then so the up to 90% gross collections. And then I guess the other product that would be top to that would be probably there's your 3 main products: startup financing, debt consolidation, and practice acquisition financing. Working capital, as I mentioned, I have to now kind of come in with any of those 3 previous products to offer some sort of working capital. So now if someone calls us and says, hey, we want just flat out working capital, well, we have to do an equity out loan, like you mentioned. So there's your 4 main products. I retract from 3 to 4. We're going to say startup financing.
Okay, so the startup financing we talked about, you can go up to 10 years, 100% financing, working capital included, application only up to $350,000. So what does that mean?
So the guy just out of school, we're pretty positive this guy doesn't have a ton of tax returns. So with just a 2-page application, we can get him approved for up to $350,000 based on his specialty and his credit.
Okay. So you might have more experience with a prosthodontist or an ophthalmologist, let's say, than a general dentist or whatever. So you'll have some different guidelines for a guy just getting into those specialties.
That's correct. And these days, it seems like these days I have to kind of come back and get full tax returns and a personal financial statement. So I wouldn't focus so much on the application-only product unless you just feel like it's a good selling point, and then we can get some sort of pre-approval based on credit with followed-up information.
Yep. Okay.
Every deal is different, as you know how it goes.
So the maximum startup loan is about $500,000. What's the interest rate typically on these kind of loans for these startups?
On a startup like that for $500,000, usually I'm going to be anywhere from 7.75 to 8.25 fixed for the life of the loan.
Okay.
Is there a loan minimum on any of these programs?
A loan minimum, I've got one right now funding out for, that was probably, maybe anything under $50,000 really tends to not be too cost effective. There's a lot of work as far as closing out a loan, and but I'll do a loan as low as $10,000.
Okay, so no real minimum.
No real minimum, especially if it becomes a vendor account. If anybody can get any sort of vendors out there to send in a consistent stream of business, that all of a sudden it's $10,000 tickets, but there's 5, 10 of them a month booking. That'd be nice.
Like dental labs might be good vendors, for example, or
yeah, that's true. Obviously the equipment dealers.
Right. Equipment dealers, of course. Okay, so then we've got the second kind of loan. That's the startup. Second kind of consolidation. 90% of last year's gross collections maximum, but it's probably going to be lower than that. Credit cards can be included. Does that mean like the doc's, put on his daughter's wedding on his personal visa, that's going to be included, or are we just talking about business credit cards?
Yeah, again, that's as long as I'm within that percentage of gross collections,
okay,
I'm fine. As long as it hits the cash flow. If that credit card is something that gets thrown into the mix of debt to be paid off,
all right,
so be it. Unlike SBA that has to go through every little piece of information, we don't necessarily have to.
So tell me about something. If you can remember a deal you've done recently for consolidation without disclosing any thing that's private, can you tell us like what situation the doc was in and then what you did for him? Just think of one.
Sure, I have one that, this one that just closed, was it Tuesday, or today's Wednesday, this one was a larger deal in New York. Two dentists, longtime partners, happen to be a longtime acquaintance of ours, and then they, over the course of years, this is a larger scale deal, and I just mention it just to let people know that they're out there. But they actually have this practice actually has 26 chairs. It's a larger deal.
Yeah, that's a large practice.
A large practice, and he recently scaled it down to 20. And
does he do Medicaid?
No Medicaid. It's just it's a family practice, and it's in a strip mall. These partners have been in practice together for about 15 years, and over the course of years, they expanded. They started out, I think, with 12 chairs, and then they expanded, but they took on a lot of little debts along the way, and we were, of course, one of their partnering financing. We pretty much put together all that financing over the course of years, but they finally came back and said, hey, let's consolidate all these debts. And there was some credit card debts in there. There was some little equipment leases. There's one company in the industry that's fairly well known for giving out really expensive working capital, and those ones are nice to get rid of, especially for the doctor and to increase the loan size. But that was for $3.2 million. We came in, put the guy at a 15-year term. He wanted a 15-year term fixed for 5. It got him down to like a 7.2 interest rate. It saved them both. It saved the practice about $8,000, a little over $8,000 a month, and everybody was happy. I think, if he would have tried to do this loan maybe through the local bank, he might have been able to go through like the challenges of getting the deal done and potentially maybe getting a rate of like 6.5% or something like that. But the difference was between the local bank and what we were able to put together is the local bank was going to max it 10 years. We put it at 15 years. We specialize in that type of financing, so we didn't have to pledge any additional assets, which the local bank wanted. And the mere fact that a guy sees that his monthly payments are going to be $8,000 less a month, it's that part of the loan sells itself. Again, it's not always about real interest rate, which I know for the most part it's just par for the course with our particular field in the financing, but it was really a matter of this guy seeing how much money he was going to save. So that was a recent loan. I just did a partnership buy-in. A doctor has an existing practice. He was looking to buy into a practice that was about 15 miles away, and it wasn't necessarily in his demographic, so it was just far enough away. He came in and we purchased the 50% of the selling practice. Because of that, we decided, when I started looking at the doctor's financials, we decided to consolidate his existing practice as well. So that turned out not only to be one loan, but 2 loans. We also have, startup, $400,000. Doctor is an associate now. He wanted to, this guy did a ton of demographic research on dentists to population ratios, and he just came across some sort of gold mine where apparently it's like 7,000 to 1, which is high in the dental arena as far as population to dentists in the area.